No, sir, I don't want to be rude. I just wanted you to have a chance to answer the question that I asked you.
I've answered everything. It's a whole hoax. And you know who's playing into the hoax? People like you.
Welcome to Watch Mojo. And today we're counting down our picks for the times that 45th U.S. President Donald Trump publicly lost his cool.
Can you give us a question?
Don't be rude. No, I'm not going to give you a question. I'm not going to give you a question.
Can you state categorically?
You are fake news.
Number 10, Trump versus Kamala Harris.
Fracking? She's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police? She's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly.
Anticipation for the second presidential debate of 2024 ran higher than one might expect. That owed to the fact that it would be the first and only face-to-face showdown between former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris, the Democratic nominee. Those drama-hungry audience members would indeed be satisfied with the events of the September 10th debate.
She was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out. Wait a minute, I'm talking now. If you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar? She went out.
In an evening defined by such memorable Trump quotes as, "They're eating the cats and dogs," and "I have concepts of a plan," Trump's catty comeback to Harris stood out. Accusing the vice president of interrupting him, the former president called back to a viral Harris line from the vice presidential debate of 2020, in which she sparred with Mike Pence.
He's going to repeal the Trump tax cuts.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking.
Well, wait.
I'm speaking.
It'd be important if you said the truth.
If you don't mind letting me finish, we can then have a conversation, okay?
Number 9, Trump versus Jeb Bush.
This is a tough business to run for president.
I know. You're a tough guy, Jeb.
And we need to have a leader that is
real
principled.
tough.
We can assure you that this won't be the last time you see the 2016 Republican presidential primary debates on our list. Although a number of prominent Republicans had been considered strong candidates at that point, that all changed on June 16, 2015, when Donald Trump formally announced his candidacy. As the primaries dragged on, the other candidates dropped like flies as it became clearer and clearer that Trump was the obvious frontrunner.
Well, let's see. I'm at 42 and you're at 3, so far I'm doing better.
Doesn't matter.
So far I'm doing better.
One of those ill-fated candidates, Jeb Bush, son of President George H.W. and brother of President George W. The former Florida governor was poorly suited to Trump's aggressive debate style, and it showed.
You know, you started off over here, Jeb. You're moving over further and further. Pretty soon you're going to be off the end.
This doesn't do a thing to solve the problem.
Number 8, Trump versus Cecilia Vega.
She's shocked that I picked her.
No.
She's like in a state of shock.
I'm not thinking, Mr.
That's
President.
okay. I know you're not thinking. You never do.
I'm sorry?
No, go ahead.
As president, Trump became notorious for his tense, combative press conferences. The former real estate magnate would often publicly clash with journalists and reporters, who he perceived as being biased and unfair to him. This was particularly pronounced in his exchanges with outlets he accused of being left-leaning.
In a tweet this weekend, Mr. President, you said that it's incorrect to say you're limiting the scope of the FBI investigation.
What does that have to do with trade? I don't mind answering the question.
This hostility was usually relatively one-sided, as evidenced by a bizarre exchange with ABC News senior White House correspondent Vega. Vega took a moment to respond to Trump's choice to call on her during a question period, and was quickly pounced on by the president. He mocked her for, quote, never thinking. To her professional credit, Vega ignored his jab and pressed forward.
I'd like to do the trade
It has
questions,
to do with the other
right?
headline in the news, which is the Kavanaugh nomination.
I know, but how about talking about trade, and then we'll get to that. We'll do that a little bit later.
Do you think the trade,
Anybody have a trade?
Do you
Go
think
ahead,
your trade
please.
deal will pass through Congress, sir?
I think so, but, you know, if it doesn't, we have lots of other alternatives.
Number 7, Trump versus Jonathan Karl.
Did serve in the previous administration.
Oh, you didn't tell me that. Oh, I see. You didn't tell me that, John.
Another such encounter found an agitated Trump lashing out at ABC News chief White House correspondent Jonathan Karl. Karl, who's since written 3 books about the Trump presidency and administration, corrected the then president. Not the best move, apparently. Trump countered by referring to ABC as fake news and attempting to backtrack on a claim about appointees to the Obama administration.
See, there's a typical fake news deal.
You asked me when she was appointed. I told you when she was appointed.
You're a
by your
third-rate
administration.
reporter, and what you just said is a disgrace, okay?
Trump shouted over the reporter as he tried to defend himself before interrupting him entirely and moving on to another question. However, that wasn't before he took one last pot shot at Carl.
Thank you very much, John.
Sir?
Thank you very much. You will never make it. Go ahead.
Number 6, Trump versus Wei Jing.
Warn them?
Who are you with?
And why did you
Yeah.
not have social distancing until March 16th?
Who are you with?
I'm Wei Jing with CBS News.
Like we said, you're going to see a bunch of these. The senior White House correspondent from CBS News, Jang frequently came to verbal blows with Trump as the COVID-19 pandemic snowballed out of the president's control. Trump, at these conferences, was perceived as making veiled remarks as to the reporter's Chinese heritage. One such encounter saw Trump straight up insulting Jang for her line of questioning, in addition to lying about the number of COVID deaths that had occurred up until that point.
Or banning China from coming in.
Chinese nationals. But by the way, not Americans who are also coming
Nice and
from
easy.
China.
Nice and easy. Just relax. We cut it off.
For context, Trump had repeatedly been criticized for remarks which blamed China for, in his view, failing to contain the spread of COVID. Number 5, Trump versus Caitlin Collins.
You held on to those documents when you knew the federal government was seeking them and then had given you a subpoena to return them.
Are you ready? Are you ready? Can I talk?
Yeah, what's
You
the
mind?
answer?
Unstoppable force, meet the immovable object. Trump headed directly into the lion's den, a televised CNN town hall in which he often became argumentative with host Caitlin Collins. His characteristic hostility for the press on full display, the former president referred to Collins as a, quote, nasty person for, as he perceived it, not letting him answer a question about hoarding documents sought by the federal government.
Do you mind?
I would like for you to answer the question.
Okay, it's very simple to answer.
That's why I asked it.
It's very simple to. You're a nasty person, I'll tell you.
A sympathetic crowd cheered the former president on at his comeback. He took a second to let it sink in with them before continuing with his answer. Number 4, Trump versus Marco Rubio.
If he builds the wall the way he built Trump Towers, he'll be using illegal immigrant labor to do it. The second...
So cute. Such a cute soundbite.
Keeping the events of the 2024 U.S. presidential election in mind, it's somewhat amusing to watch Florida Senator Rubio duke it out with then-candidate Trump in 2016. After all, before Trump decided on Ohio Senator J.D. Vance as his 2024 running mate, Rubio was reportedly a top 3 contender. One thing Rubio and Vance have in common besides their jobs, they were both, at one point or another, vocal Trump haters.
Here's a guy that buys a house for $179,000. He sells it to a lobbyist who's probably here for $380,000, and then legislation is passed. You tell me about this guy.
Although Vance's past comments that Trump could be, quote, America's Hitler are laughable now, they almost pale in comparison to Rubio's animosity toward Trump, which he often made explicitly clear in the 2016 Republican primaries.
He lied, 100%. 100%.
You lied about the Polish workers.
Yeah.
You lied to the
30
students of
38
Trump
years ago.
University.
38 years ago.
Oh, he lied 38 years ago. All right, I guess there's a statute of limitation on lies.
Number 3, Trump versus Jim Acosta.
Here we go.
If you don't mind, Mr. President, that this caravan was an invasion. As you know, Mr. President,
I consider it to be an invasion.
As you know, Mr. President, the caravan was not an invasion. It's a group of migrants moving up from Central America towards the border with the U.S.
In case you didn't know, Trump's biggest enemy within his despised liberal media? It would almost certainly be CNN, a network that Trump has often vocally criticized for being, quote, fake news that doesn't portray him fairly. That bubbling resentment spilled over at one fateful press conference in 2018.
But your campaign had an ad showing migrants climbing over walls and so on.
Well, that's true.
But
they weren't actors.
They're not going to be doing that.
They weren't actors. Well, no, it's true. Do you think they were actors? They weren't actors. They didn't come from Hollywood.
Amidst conservative media stoking fears that a migrant caravan was making its way up to the U.S. and harboring nefarious aims. Attempting to challenge Trump's fear-mongering, Chief White House correspondent Jim Acosta verbally tussled with the president. To which Trump responded by insulting Aasta and CNN as a whole.
I think you should let me run the country. You run CNN.
All right.
And if you did it well, your ratings
Let
would
me
be
ask,
much better.
if I may
Okay,
ask
that's
one other
enough.
question, Mr. President, if I may ask
Peter,
one
go
other
ahead.
question, are you worried?
That's enough. That's enough.
Mr. President, I
That's
was going
enough.
to ask one of the other folks. have
That's
had-
enough.
Number 2, Trump versus Joe Biden.
I just won 2 club championships, not even senior, 2 regular club championships. To do that, you have to be quite smart, and you have to be able to hit the ball a long way.
Is it fair to say by now that the first presidential debate of 2024 was the most consequential ever? While that's going to be up for debate for a long time, it's inarguable that this debate was immensely impactful. That owes to the fact that after this debate, President Biden was harshly criticized for his fatigued, lackluster performance, and after weeks of calls to step down, relinquished the Democratic nomination.
Look, I'd be happy to have a driving contest with him. I got my handicap, which when I was vice president, down to a 6. But by the way, I told you before, I'm happy to play golf if you carry your own bag.
Biden's fiercest moment came, bizarrely enough, after former President Trump dared to critique his golf game. While Biden was the clear loser, it's hard to say that Trump was any kind of winner, especially when you consider the juvenile mudslinging that this debate consisted of.
That's the biggest lie that he's a 6 handicap of all.
I was an 8 handicap.
Yeah.
8.
Never.
But I have, you know how many?
I've seen you swing. I know you swing.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into settings and switch on your notifications. Number 1, Trump and Mike Pence versus Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer.
You have the vote. You should pass it
No, we
right
don't have
now.
the votes, Nancy, because in the Senate we need 60
No,
votes.
no, but in the House.
And we don't
you
have.
could bring it up right now.
Yeah, but I
today.
can't, excuse me, but I can't get it passed in the House if it's not going to pass in the Senate. I don't want to waste time.
Well,
If there's anything you can count on from Donald Trump, it's that he's predictably unpredictable. Infamous for his rambling, monologuing, stream of consciousness style of rallying and campaigning, then President Trump brought those qualities to what was meant to be a routine press briefing in 2018. Seemingly unable to help himself, Trump sharply veered from his talking points and simultaneously argued with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer.
Nancy, we need border security. It's very simple.
Of course we do.
We need border security.
do.
People are pouring into our country, including terrorists. We have terrorists. We caught 10 terrorists over the last very short period of time.
As described at the time by Andrew Rastuccia and Elena Johnson for Politico, quote, Trump handed Democrats what they consider a massive gift. A direct and unqualified admission, on live TV no less, that he will be responsible for a government shutdown. End quote.
You want to know something?
You've said it.
Okay, you want to put that on
You've
my...
said it.
I'll take it.
Okay, good.
You know what I'll say? Yes. If we don't get what we want, one way or the other, whether it's through you, through a military, through anything you want to call, I will shut down the government.
Okay.
Which Donald Trump moment has you shocked the most? Let us know in the comments below.
So do you acknowledge that you didn't think
Keep
it
your
was
voice
going
down,
to
please.
spread?
Keep your voice down.
Did you not
How
think it
many,
was
how
going to
many,
spread?
how many cases were in the United States? I did a ban.
Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from WatchMojo and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.